Have you ever looked at someone and say, wow, this guy's just so happy, he's so funny. It almost feels like he never experienced struggles and challenges and lemons that life has thrown at him. Right. I feel like we've all met some people that are like that, people that anywhere that they are, they just smile, they crack jokes, they're just a sunshine to be, right? And it doesn't really matter what kind of gender you are, right? And sometimes you start to wonder what makes them so happy, because sometimes the world is just so sorrow, the world is just so dark, right? But somehow they manage to just be a light to everyone, to anyone around them, right? I remember I asked a person, because I'm kind of a straightforward guy. I remember asking this person as to like, why are you so happy all the time? What makes you so happy? And of course he paused, because I feel like it's a question that is very just weird to ask to a person, right? And don't worry, I know this person. We've been knowing each other for a year, so it's okay. He knows me, I know him, right? He paused and he looked at me and said, it's the only thing that he knows what to do. And at first I didn't understand what he meant by that, what the person meant by that. All I asked back was, what do you mean by that? What do you mean that it's the only thing that you know what to do? Because he is a fairly smart student, right? And he just shrugged it off, he just said, well, it's the thing that I'm better at doing than just focusing on my grades. So as time passed by, I haven't really get in touch with him that much anymore, but as time passed by and now I'm more mature and now I can clearly think better for myself, I started to understand that maybe it's the only thing that makes me feel alive, because sometimes the most funniest person that you've encountered, that you've been friends with, that you've met with, are usually the ones that hide a lot of misery in their life, right? And they know how ridiculous or how heartbreaking the feeling of not being enough. So they comfort themselves and they mask their misery by being funny, Cracking jokes is the only thing that can make them not think about their problems. And now that I look back to the question that I asked the person, I now realize that I'm a very insensitive person, right? And I'm not really trying to say that my younger self is right. I feel like it's a question that I should really be asking anyone, really, but we learn, right? We learn from our mistakes and we be better, right, in the future, right? But I feel like now that I'm old enough, I tend to understand what people mask their misery with being funny by using comedy as a coping mechanism. I feel like it's a way just to make them feel like they're not a mistake, that they are still in control of their lives, Even as very sorrow, even as very depressing as it sounds, I can assure to you that a lot of the people that I've met with usually are like that. And by what I mean by like that is that being funny is the only reason that they can think straight or think sane. I'm going to say this. It's the only way that could prevent them from doing something very dumb, right? And I know that a lot of you guys have seen, or not have seen, but have met people that are like that, And I've also known that, is also a person that is very close to someone right? It's almost like saying that they are like a person that everyone likes, but not everyone would choose. In a way, not for everyone in this type, but usually it's like everyone knows them, everyone likes them, but not everyone would understand them. Yes, everyone would laugh, but not a lot of people would ask him, how his days are going. Not everyone would look at him, and hug him. Not everyone would also crack jokes, to him so that he can also laugh as well, right? Because usually these people, the people that mask their misery, or do comedy or use comedy to cope with their, sadness, are usually the people that wanted to create a better world, right? They don't want people to experience what they have experienced, because they're a very kind-hearted person. Sometimes their ways are not really the right ways, but usually, they meant good. The intentions that they have is good, right? And I feel like that's already good enough, right? But like I said, they don't want people to experience the thing that they have experienced. In fact, they want to prevent it. They don't want people to be sad all the time, because the feeling is not fun, right? Especially when you're alone, right? And this the thing. Usually, the funniest person is also the loneliest person, right? Like a lot of people want to be alone, but they don't want to be lonely. But sometimes this type of person, they don't have a choice. They have to do it because they always feel so alone, even if they are in home. Sometimes being at home feels like in prison. They don't really like it at home. And it's weird to say that, because usually homes are the safest place, for children, for teenagers, for children, really, right? I feel like the people that are hiding themselves behind comedy are the people that is broken. They have scars. They have scar in their lives, and they don't want people to experience that. Or sometimes they just don't care about people. It's just their way of coping. It's just their way of saying, like, I might just do good, because sometimes, life is meaningless and all that. I just do good. Let's make some funny jokes. Let's make people laugh. At least it makes me feel better, with my existence. And usually it's like that, right? But sometimes being funny to hide your misery is something that is very common nowadays, and you can see it on, like, comedians like Jim Carrey. So, like, right now the only example that I can think of is basically Jim Carrey. I used to watch him. Like, he's very funny. The expression that he makes is just so funny. But there's a lot of videos of him talking about his depression, and how much that he wanted to kill himself. To be honest, there's a lot of comedians out there that are hiding really, really dark past, right? But they decided to use comedy as a way to cope, and in a way, it makes the world somewhat of a not too serious of a place. Too serious of a reality, right? And sometimes, I wanted to say thank you to them, because they give some sort of like a feeling of where you can just smile for a while. I don't know. It's just a person where I just hope that maybe one day, they can just be happy with themselves, and they don't really need to hide themselves with comedy, or they don't need to mask their misery with, like, being funny. I just want them to live a normal life sometimes, because they made us happy, and I feel like they deserve to be happy as well, right? I think it's like the normal thing to hope for. But yeah, to all the funny person out there who has made me laugh when I'm very low in energy of being alive, I just wanted to say thank you, because you've saved my life, and I feel like you've saved a lot of people's lives, and I hope that one day maybe some other person, or some person, or a person would also do the same to you, so that you know that you are truly not a mistake, that you are welcome here and that you are loved.